get off on doing things other people aren't willing to do. I started to figure this out. Winning's not that hard. You see how these guys behave? You see how they party? Most people don't do any of this stuff I teach. And so actually show up earlier, actually do the extra reps. I started doing this thing called one more. If the set was 10 sets on a bench press, I did 10 and one more. If that day I said I'm gonna make 10 contacts, I did 10 and one more. I do it and I say, you're doing something no one's willing to do. You're gonna get what no one's willing to get. And I learned my little formula. Don't tell me you're mega successful when there's trillions of dollars circulating in an economy and you've got your hands on a couple million of them. I love being challenged. I love being course corrected. I love being told how I can improve. I love people pointing out where I need to get better. Why don't you want to be challenged? Well, I'll take the coaching, but you need to say it in a way that I like it. No, I don't. I need to say it in a way that gets you to change. So often people are put off by direct challenging and coaching, yet say they want this next level more than they want oxygen. Yeah, but we have to say it nice? But that makes no sense whatsoever. So I'm always a little bit skeptical of those guys. You can say it to me however you want. If it gets me to move, let's do it. Is it that you don't believe you're disciplined? Is it that you don't believe you're worthy? Is it that you don't believe you're lovable or loving? What is it with you? And then work on that identity setting.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ed Mylett, the American entrepreneur, business coach, author, and motivational speaker. You started from nothing and today have a net worth of over $400 million and named in the Forbes top 50 wealthiest under 50. You host the #1 business podcast, The Ed Mylett Show, where you interview peak performers like David Goggins, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and Jay Shetty. Your best-selling book, Max Out, details your strategies for creating personal identity, building self-confidence, and developing the will to win. As one of the top business leaders and performance experts in the world, your mission is to inspire people to obtain happiness now, no matter their situation. Ed, welcome to London Real.
Ryan, great to be with you, brother. You know, I've wanted to do this for a long time, so it's an honor to be with you.
Look, I'm so happy to do this. There's so much to talk about, but you know, happiness, that's that word that I grab onto right away. And I'd love to start there because a lot of people see you, Ed, and they see a really successful guy, a guy that's in shape, that's kind of a master of his domain. And, you know, then when you say happiness, they might think, well, I'd expect Sadhguru to say that or Joe Dispenza to say that. But for you, you think we can all have happiness now. And I find that really interesting. I also find it juxtaposed with your social media following. You're massive on social, Ed, and you're, you know, in this space, over 2 million followers on Instagram. And that's the place where I find most people go to get unhappy, you know, because they're bombarded with people that are always doing something better to them. I always tell my members of my academy, there's always someone out there that's better looking than you, has a better looking wife, has a bigger car, has a this and a that. And because of technology, we're plugged into this comparison platform. How do you get those things in your head? Again, this technology is a new thing, really, and yet it seems to sometimes make us unhappier. So just curious what your read is on that.
Well, I think I talk about happiness a lot because first off, it's what everybody wants. We think we want the car, but really it's how the car will make us feel. We think that car will make us happy. We want the jet. We want the relationship because of what we think. We want those emotions. And so I think I talk about it a lot because I've sought it out all my life. And when I was young, I really was that person that thought, I call it blissful dissatisfaction is the way that you should live, is which that you can live blissfully now and still be dissatisfied. People conflate those things and they think, well, if I'm unhappy, I'm also, if I allow myself to be happy, I'll lose all my drive. You can be simultaneously dissatisfied with where you are and still blissful. And I never understood that when I was young. And so I think you're asking me how old I was before we started. I think one of the reasons maybe I look a little bit older was the stress I put myself under as a young man, delaying bliss until a particular destination. And every time I get there, I'd move the goalpost more and more, and I was never happy. And it finally occurred to me, I had a couple different incidents take place, but it just finally occurred to me that I can be happy in myself now. And really what it comes down to is it sounds corny from a big entrepreneur guy, but it's accepting and loving yourself as you are, but not accepting and loving the destination you're at. So I love the man I am at any place, but I'm not dissatisfied with I am dissatisfied with my location. Even to this day, I want to improve. I want to grow. Sometimes I think it's a disease or an illness of mine, but I've learned to enjoy myself as I'm growing, as I'm improving, as I'm moving to the next level. And social media is absolutely that place. I have to guard against it. Oh, wow, Gary Vee had 17,000 comments on that post. Mine did that. I struggle with that stuff. All comparison is a formula for misery. All comparison. And what often we do, Brian, is one of the most insidious forms of comparison is comparison to our former self. So if we're not in that relationship anymore that we wish we were still in, we compare. Or maybe the relationship we're in, we compare to the 6th week when it was blissful and we were getting to know each other. Now we're in the 6th year and we compare to what it was then to now, and it's not the same, and that hurts us. Or we lament a decision we've made. I'm really become good at not comparing me to former versions of me or to other people that I see. That is something that has brought me great joy that I didn't have when I was younger.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that comparison is the most dangerous thing. There's a lot of people say, stay away from this and stay away from that. But I mean, that must take a lot of mental discipline to catch yourself when you're comparing, because we're probably doing it hundreds or thousands of times a day.
I literally catch myself doing it and I go, scratch it. I'm not kidding. I go, scratch it. And I'm old enough that I can picture a record or a DVD player literally being scratched. I don't want it to even be in my unconscious, my subconscious mind where it comes back, because all misery's a comparison. And we may not realize it. We're not really that upset with where we are. What we are is, what happens is we compare it to where we think we should be. And that very comparison is what brings us misery. We're happy to be breathing. We're happy to be alive. We're happy we woke up. It's the immediate comparison to what could be, used to be, should be, or somebody else's does that brings us the sadness, the angst, the anxiety, the worry, the frustration is always comparison. And I would encourage everybody to evaluate this. The next time you feel these negative emotions you don't want, all the ones I just listed, you're comparing to something you don't have, or a place you are not, or someone else's life every single time.
Wow. Yeah, so blissfully dissatisfied. I was probably that guy that ever thought, Ed, and I grew up before YouTube, before podcasts. Both of us didn't have this massive resources of people. I always think, what would my life have been different if in my 20s or 30s I could have tapped into, Joe Dispenza, who we've had on the show, or, a myriad of people. But I was the guy that probably would have said, if I ever celebrate happiness, I'm not going hard enough. I'm getting lazy. You know what I mean? Maybe I was, but that's not necessarily true.
It's not true. In fact, we all do it. There's two types of people. There's people that delay their happiness to a particular destination. Once I meet that man, once I meet that woman, once I get the promotion, once I get this house, they delay it. The other one's the achievers. The achievers are like, wait a minute. If I enjoy this, I'm going to lose all my drive, because my formula, my recipe so far is kind of be miserable. Try to avoid this misery I feel. And that causes me to acquire new levels of life. And so we think, oh my gosh, if I celebrate, if I enjoy, I'm toast. The truth is, I've known for years that wasn't true. And as I've started to research and understand the brain, I had Dr. Andrew Huberman on. He says, actually, we've researched dopamine. Turns out you get far less dopamine when you achieve something than when you're in the stress phase of pursuing it. Your brain feeds you more joy and bliss in the pursuit, literally, than when you acquire it. It's all been studied in the brain. So this notion that we're going to lose our drive or ambition is completely false. In fact, the more rewards we get for enjoying it, the more we want to do it again. There becomes a point, people have all heard of burnout. And what burnout is, and it's a very real thing, what burnout is it's somebody who's robbed themselves of the joy, the bliss, and the celebrations far too many times as they've achieved. And their brain has concluded, there's no dopamine in this achievement thing for me anymore. Therefore, I have no desire to do it again. So you better celebrate, you better enjoy. The truth is, it's the formula for greater achievement in the future, long term.
Wow. All right. So next time you feel yourself thinking, when I get this achievement, I'm going to be happy. Just be happy to be in the moment, doing something you love, taking some risks, stretching yourself, because that's where the juice is.
For most people, yeah. For most people, the juice is growth.
Yeah.
So, if you study anybody who's really great, I am a Tiger Woods fan. And if you really listen to him, you say he's a winner, second place is first loser. You also listen, he says, I just want to give myself a shot on the back nine on Sunday. I want to be in contention. What he's saying is, I want to be in the hunt. What I love is the hunt. What I love is the chase. What I love is the competition. What I love is the pursuit. That doesn't mean I don't want to win. I've won a great deal and I've lost a great deal, and I'll take winning over losing every single time. Believe me. But most of the great growth in my life, where I've become a better man, a better businessman, a better father, better friend, better human, has been in the times when I lost, not in the times when I won. That's just a fact. And I don't know why this hasn't become more part of our culture, because there are people like Joe or Andrew who can prove that this stuff is true. But most of them, and Joe's one of my dearest friends, don't come from an achiever's perspective. They come from more of that let it come to you perspective, that bliss, that Zen kind of perspective. And most achievers are like, yeah, that's great. I'll get around to this meditation, heart, all that crap once I get everything, right? But I'm saying they're right, and you can achieve more if you'll do that now.
Yeah, that's a super powerful point. I mean, just to think about the happiness thing. I mean, I grew up not far from you, Southern California, San Diego. And for some reason, when I was a kid, I think it got etched in my mind. I always call it the American dream, but I thought that when I had money, I would be happy. I don't know why. I used to have dreams I was rich and wake up and realize we weren't. But for me, that was kind of etched in my mind. And, I went down that road for a long time, Ed, but it never satisfied me. And so, I went to a good school and I was working on Wall Street. And then, in my 30s, I think I was looking for other things to make me happy. Got involved in alcohol and drugs. And then when I finally got to London, I was still 40 years old, working in the city here, which is the Wall Street equivalent, doing really well. And I noticed one day that my bank account kept going up every quarter, because they would pay us every quarter in the business I was working. And I wasn't getting any happier. I was alone in this big house with no family, still trying to drink myself to death. And I was just like, this isn't working. And that's why we're talking here today, because I decided to make a change. And it was because I started being of service. And I always thought those were the corny people, Ed, that were of service, The
other thing you became that all happy people have, brother, is more self-aware. I lived completely unaware of who I was, unobserving of who I was for so many years, thinking I'd get around to it. The happiest people I know are very aware. They're self-deprecating, I've realized I'm a very average, ordinary person. I grew up like you. I thought there wasn't a lot of happiness around me, so it must be in those beach houses.
Right.
It must be on those jets. And by the way, there are those things, they do make you happy. People say, well, material things don't make you happy. That's just a lie. Any of you ever bought a beautiful suit like you're wearing? Makes you happy. For how long? I don't know. Does it fulfill us, though? Which is a completely different emotion. No, service is what fulfills us. But I had a catalyst, too. I was building my first big mansion dream house. And I met my wife, as I told you, when we were 5 years old. So it's a family project. And we walk in one day, I'm having a bad day. I'm mad at everybody. Business isn't going good. Appointments had flaked out. Walk in the house and they're building it. And I'll never forget this. They were in the kitchen, building the kitchen, this huge, great room. I walked in and I'm pissed, yelling at veins sticking out. And all the guys working in my house were in Southern California. You know this as well. The vast majority of people that were working on my home were from Mexico. Whether they were there legally or not, I don't know, but they were working. There's about 15 guys working in my house, all making minimum wage. All had left their families at one point. and they're playing mariachi music. They're laughing, they're dancing, they're joyous as they're working. And I stopped myself with my wife. It'll make me too emotional to talk too long about it. And I looked and I thought, if life is measured on happiness, these guys are killing me. They're building my mansion. My veins are sticking out of my neck. I'm miserable. They're making minimum wage. It's 100 degrees. They're working in my house, building my kitchen. And they're singing and dancing and loving each other and having a blast, happy to be here. And I'm miserable, and this is my damn house. What the hell is wrong with me? And that was a real turning point for me where I went, what do they know I don't? And what they were doing is I was always projecting forward. It was always the future. I never lived now. You know, I didn't always live in the past. I'm not one of those that kind of comparison is not my thing. But I never lived now. They were living right now because they don't even know what their future is.
Right.
What a great gift to live right now and be grateful for that moment, that work, that song, that buddy of theirs working next to them. And I started to just slow down my appreciation for the moment. And that's really changed my life. And I can't tell you that I still don't revert back because I do, but I do it much less because I am self-aware. I catch myself when I do it.
Now, there's a lot of people watching us right now or listening to us that are shaking their head up and down saying, I've had the Ed Mylett mansion moment in my own way, you know, to whatever degree where they've realized, why am I so upset and angry? I've got so much, and here's someone with technically less who's happy. But a lot of people never know how to get out of that cycle because it's one thing to notice it, but you know, a lot of people repeat it for years. How did you break out? I know it's still a struggle, but how did you start to get out of that and be in the now? Because it's easy to say, but it's really hard to do, especially if you've built your whole life as this high performance, go-getter, looking to the future, what's next kind of guy.
Yeah, and I am a high performance go-getter still, as you know, and I haven't let that version of me go. Here's the fallacy. People think I have to let go of a part of me. This is not true. I have to let go of a part of me in order for this other part to appear. What if you just added more to you? I don't have to let go of my intensity. This is what makes me who I am. It's what makes some of you who you are, your competitive spirit, your focus level, your drive, your ambition. It's not an either or. You don't have to let go of that. My first job, Brian, my dad came home from an AA meeting, had just gotten sober. Everything happens for you, not to you. I had been living at home with my parents out of college, just losing. And my dad goes, I got you a job tomorrow. It's at McKinley Home for Boys. I said, what is it? He goes, it doesn't matter. Get your ass down there tomorrow. So I get down there. It's an orphanage. And there's hundreds of boys there. They were all taken from their families. Either parents were dead, incarcerated, or had molested them. Wow. I walk into cottage 8. My boys are all 8, 9, and 10 years old, these precious little boys. And I walk in, it's before school. It's about 7 a.m. And the cottage stops and they all look at me with these eyes. Any kid who's had any kind of dysfunction in their life, I have this philosophy, our eyes are a little bit different. You know, we just want to be loved. And my life changed temporarily. And what changed was I was this athlete before that. All of a sudden, I'm these guys' dad. I'd walk them to school. I'd open presents with them on Christmas Eve. I was there when they brought the report cards home from school. I put them to bed every night. And we were walking to school one day, and we do it every day, and they'd have to walk in a straight line with me. And little Jose every day would skip up in front. And I'd say, Jose, get back in line, get back in line. And finally one day, he did it again. I said, Jose, I'm not going to tell you again, get back in line. We got to walk in a straight line. He goes, I'm sorry, mister. I said, why do you do this every day? He goes, Mr. Ed, I'm just so happy. There's no gunshots in this neighborhood on the way to school. Nobody's going to shoot me. He was 9 years old. And I remember thinking, he's grateful to not be shot on the way to school. And here I am walking angry with these precious boys. And every one of those boys wanted a few things. They wanted someone to love them, believe in them, care about them, and teach them how to live better. Love, care, right? Believe, and teach them how to live better. And here's what I have found. So do all the adults I meet in my life. Every human being wants to be loved, cared for, believed in. And if you can teach them how to live a little bit better, they'll be very grateful. And so I found, for me, my go zone is loving, caring, believing in people, and teach them how to live better. The fourth part only happens when I grow and improve. So if I stop growing and improving and achieving, I cheat myself out of the thing I love most, which is what you said, which is serving people. So my growth and achievement is connected to my capacity to serve. And that linkage right there, brother, is why I can live blissfully dissatisfied. I don't give up my growth and achievement to serve. It's directly correlated between the two things. So I must achieve, I must grow in order to be better at serving. And that's how I've wired myself.
Right, because if you don't continue to grow, let's be honest, you can't really serve. You know, you could take a short break, but if you just put a pause and say, oh yeah, the stuff I was talking about back in 2020, it still applies, they don't buy it, do they? Everybody looks at you funny and they say, but you're not emanating the energy of someone in growth. So guess what? I'm not going to listen to you, or it's just going to bounce off me. That's true, right?
Absolutely. Congruency and authenticity equal efficiency. And so I need to be congruent and authentic. And if I'm that, I can make an impact. I can transfer energy. Everything, as you know, is your capacity to transfer that energy to somebody. And you can't transfer to somebody that which you're not experiencing yourself. And so when you're in the throes of experiencing something, you can transfer and give that to me. When you cease to experience it, that energy doesn't transfer anymore. And so I know for a fact I have to be doing that. And that is why I'm a relatively happy dude who's still achieving. And I might even be achieving at a faster pace because I'm under no illusion I need to give up my passion, my intensity, my work ethic. I still work crazy hours to the normal human being. I just somehow enjoy them more than I used to.
Wow. Well, that's mastery if you can figure out how to do that. Because, you know, that's what a lot of high performance guys never can get their head around. Sinatra famously was unhappy. You know, you talk to, you know, Jerry Weintraub, I think wrote in his book and was just saying, you know what? He was still always kind of grumpy and miserable because I don't know if he ever figured out that thing you're talking about, you know, achieving things, and he took risks, and we remember him for all these things, but, you know, what was he able to be blissful in the moment? I don't know, you know.
I knew Jerry pretty well, and I'm not so sure Jerry figured that out to the extent that he would like to either, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, we are who we associate with to some extent as well. And that lack of attitude and appreciation. I'm not, by the way, disparaging Jerry. I love Jerry. He was a sweet man, a dear man, but I would have always wished for him even a little bit more bliss for the wonderful life that he had. And obviously I do know that about Sinatra.
Yeah, it's strange because Jerry was so prolific. I mean, even in his older years, he was doing so many things. It makes you always wonder, like, and I think it's not true. Can you accomplish that much, you know, without having something, that thing missing where you got to do it? But you're saying you can. It's just being in that state of being blissfully disappointed. But it's a fine line you got to walk, right?
Yeah, you think that, I just think you think you're going to lose your edge, and in fact, you get a different edge. I love Jerry, by the way. When I first met Jerry, he's going to tell you this. I've never met anybody in my life who's introduced themselves this way. I did not know who he was. I knew who Jerry Weintraub was, but I didn't know I was meeting Jerry Weintraub. And I said, I'm Ed Mylett. And he goes, hey, I'm Jerry effing Weintraub. But he didn't say effing. I just thought that's a cool way to introduce yourself to somebody.
Oh, my gosh. Jesus, he sounds really intense.
Yeah, he was.
Super intense. It's interesting you said, like, awareness of yourself, because funny enough, when I made the transition from banker to broadcaster, it was because I finally took a meditation course. And I kid you not, Ed, literally 30 days later of doing twice a day meditation, I took a transcendental meditation class here in London. I always tell the story, they charged me like £1,000, something crazy, right? And people are like, why didn't you get the Calm app or something? Because there was no apps then, right? And so, but I always say, if I hadn't have paid for it, I wouldn't have done it, because for me, it was very woo-woo. You know, they were playing the old videotapes of the Indian guy that was dead, and I had to bring in a piece of fruit and a white napkin. I was like, come on, you're giving me a secret mantra. You know, I'm like, come on. But since I paid it, it's pay price to action. I was like, I'm not going to quit on this. So I went the whole 9, and I actually got the practice. And 30 days later, I one morning after meditation, I said, oh, Brian's not happy because he's doing stupid things that don't make him happy. It's time to make a change. So that's how it all happened.
I'm laughing just because that's almost exactly how I started. Started in TM, paid a fortune for it, thought these people were crazy, had my buzzword, you know, I had all that. I'm like, what am I doing? And then just slowly over time, and I really struggle with, I remember talking to Tony Robbins about this. He's like, hey man, I struggle with this stuff too. just quieting my mind for 15 seconds. But it's like anything. I think I would just tell everyone it's a muscle that you develop. And now many years later, walking meditations, and I don't know what I would do without my ability to empty my mind. I can't even imagine living that way anymore.
Yeah, you make a great point for anybody listening who's struggling with starting. And I try to get all my students to do it. It's such an important thing. But I always tell people, people think that meditators are like these Buddhist monks that always have these amazing meditation sessions. Even the most experienced person will have a bumpy session where your mind's all over the place. And again, it's a skill. When I first started, it was really hard. I had to say my mantra over and over again. Now I can drop into it, anytime. But that's only come with years of practice. So, and there's never a bad session. If you do the session, it's a good session. I always tell people.
I so agree with you. And I tell people that all the time. So many friends of mine quit 30, 45 days in because they've not yet, been able to empty their mind even for a little short window of time. I would just encourage everybody, continue to do it. There's a morning, there's a breakthrough. We've all had them where we're like, wow, that was it right there. And then you'll miss it. You'll miss it, but you'll come back to it. And the more and more you do it, you'll get in that space. So I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and things are happening to your subconscious the whole time that it lags. It's that second order effect. And so that's why I'm diligent, man. Every morning I do it, even it's Saturday and I hear my boys making noise in the background and I want to go see them. I still do my 20 to 30 minutes because I know if I don't do my meditation, the Brian I don't like is going to come out potentially, and I don't like that guy and I don't want to see him around and I haven't seen him in a long time and we're going to keep it that way. So I pay my dues in the morning and I want to get to morning routines later. You mentioned your childhood, Ed. I think what's really interesting for people to learn about you is your contrast. I think this is something that Tom Bilyeu does really well. I know you know Tom, and he said, Brian, my whole life is trying to explain to people I wasn't born a billionaire so they can see the shift and realize they can do it. And a lot of people see you, Ed, and they're like, this guy easily was born with it. He was born in good shape, good looking, great speaker. He must have been born in this beach house on the boat. But that's not true. You used to be known as Eddie Spaghetti. Is that right?
Oh, you really do your research. Yeah. Yeah, I was known as Eddie Spaghetti for sure.
and who was that kid? I mean, you mentioned your father a bit, but what did that name mean and who were you and how did you evolve?
Brother, I moved this weekend. So I was going through all these old pictures and it was emotional for me because I'm looking at pictures of Eddie Spaghetti when he was 5 and 7 and 9 and man, I want to go back and hug that kid.
Yeah.
I was, unbelievably shy and insecure. And I'm still very introverted. Very introverted.
That's always a surprise. That's surprising to hear. I heard you say that to someone in a conversation and I was just like, wow, because I am too, and no one believes it. But that's hard for people to hear with you because you don't seem you are.
Yeah, and I don't think you do either. What you have that most introverts have is you're an incredible listener. And so that certainly, you have some of the clues that would lead me to believe you're introverted. Your ability for empathy, compassion, and listening is real evident. But me with the deep voice and the weird features, I don't know that I'm a sympathetic figure, but the little boy me was incredibly insecure and shy. I'm very small. I think probably one of the reasons I got into weightlifting was I was so undersized and so small, so bullied, so picked on. And then you max that up with a loving family, but I'd come home and, a lot of instability in my home with my dad. My dad is my best friend. He's been sober 30 years. He's actually just got out of the hospital a couple of days ago, but my dad wasn't sober when I lived there. So that anxiety, any of you that grew up with parents that didn't get along or a divorce or alcohol or drugs or any physical or mental or verbal abuse, just anxiety all the time. So I just grew up worrying. I wasn't really a little boy very long. I just didn't have all that peace of mind and ease and naivete that comes with being a child. So it wasn't great in my house. Then I'd go to school and get picked on. I wasn't a good athlete because I was small. I finally found baseball, which I was good at. But I think that's why I tended to get into personal development and personal growth is I had to learn to do these things to become a baseline functioning human. And then I connect well and relate to people. I mean, I'm weird. Brother, I'm driving out here last night. I'm at a stoplight. People are gonna think I've lost my mind when I share this one with you. And just you pull stuff out of people nobody does. I'm at a stoplight here, and it's a long light in town. I'm in La Quinta, and there's this woman in the car next to me, and I have this habit now. Does she know who I am? Because I prefer to be anonymous still. She doesn't know who I am. I'm looking at her. She's in her car. She's a little bit overweight, and I just start thinking about her and her life. Now, do you ever do that, like with a stranger? And I start my eyes well up at this light, and I start literally crying, not sobbing, but water pouring out of my eyes. So I just had this notion she was sad and felt invisible, and maybe hasn't had as much joy and ecstasy and love and passion and achievement in her life. And she's a human being, and she's just in her car, probably leaving work, probably going home. She's just existing. And I was overcome with emotion for her. And I wanted to help her. I wanted to roll her window and I go, I can help you, But I guess the reason I share that with you is because of the way I grew up, I do have real empathy for people. I wish I saw that more in our political leaders today. Yeah. Just a little empathy. Like, let them know you care. I love you. You belong. You're not invisible. I see you. And I think that's part of my childhood, certainly rearing its head as a almost 50-year-old man now.
I mean, do you think about, like that woman that was in the car? I mean, like, what percentage of the population is in that state, And I guess if I go further, do you think 20 years from now that might change drastically? Because that could have a major impact on the whole world's happiness if people could find a way out of that shell,
I think that the percentage, so I don't know, but I think the percentage is scary high. Like maybe in the 90 plus percentile.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And so I that worries me. Just we're a culture of unhappy beings for the most part at the greatest time ever to be alive, even including COVID. Am I optimistic that can change? I am because of what you said. There's more and more access to people like myself, you've named other people on the show that are here to serve and here to help. I think we need to find ways where this information and, as I said earlier, the energy is transferred. There's a little bit through our shows that are awesome. Social media is awesome. But to really make change, people need to be plugged into environments, as you know. The mental side of life is very important, but the environmental is maybe even more important. What's the environment you're in, whom you're around? I mean, and not this, who are the 5 people you associate with thing we've all heard a million times, but truly, what's the environment you live in? All of this social unrest, I don't know that it's articulated as well as it could be, but what people are really saying is, hey, I'm growing up in a disadvantaged environment. If you would just give me a fair environment, I'm mentally capable of doing this. I just need an environmental change, whether that's socially or culturally or the neighborhood itself, the school itself or the child. And so the only way that changes is if the environment change. And I don't know whether that'll happen or not, but it's why I'm on your show. It's why I'm existing at this stage of my life. I know it's why you serve. And so I'm a big believer in humans, and I think the greater good will prevail eventually.
Yeah, and I'm definitely optimistic. I mean, again, like I thought of that this like today or yesterday. If the Brian who was 28 years old in New York City or 29 years old, who had just had his first heroin overdose, but the rest of the world still thought he was, this high performance guy and his life was a mess and he couldn't figure out a way around this. If I could have plugged into everything on YouTube right now and been around people and gotten that mentorship, man, I really think I would have been able to make more changes, but I didn't know how to get any of that. It's like read a book or get a Tony Robbins tape or there wasn't many options, right?
So that was it. It was read a book or get a Tony Robbins tape. That's why the world's so great now. My family, obviously for you too, it's odd for them now the last 5 years when we go out that people recognize you and are appreciative of your work. I always tell my kids, do you realize how many people don't recognize Daddy? Like the majority of people don't recognize Daddy, right? And so that means the majority of people don't know about this stuff, aren't learning these tools. And so it's still, I think it's 90% plus. Do you think you think I'm too high on that guess?
I think you're right. I think it's hard for us to judge because we're in a world where people talk about these ideas, right? But from the guests to the people that stop you on the street. But I think if you're being objective, I do think you're right. And the problem is if you look at mainstream media and MTV and the way most of social media is, it unenforces a lot of what we do. So I think that's probably right. And now it could be. Yeah.
The big thing, Brian, I think people don't give themselves credit for. I just want to say, I want to make sure I've said this on your show, because people ask me, where does the self-confidence transformation come from? And it's all kinds of things that I list in my content that we can talk about. But here's just something very simple. I had a great blessing in my life. When I was like 30 years old, I'm running on the beach in Maui. I won an incentive trip from my company. It was my first time ever in Hawaii. Running on the beach, like 5 a.m. This is why good things come to those who work out. There's this guy running the other way on the beach, the other direction. So we're going to pass each other. I see him coming. He sees me. It's Wayne Dyer. And if those of your guests don't know who Wayne Dyer is, they should find out. But so we passed each other and I stopped. I said, Mr. Dyer. Because it was like Wayne Dyer, Tony Robbins back then, right?
Right.
And I said, Mr. Dyer, I said, you've changed my life. And he said, he has a Walkman, a Sony Walkman. He stops. He says, I did? How'd I do that? Because I think you changed your life. And that leads to us sitting on the beach for about 45 minutes talking. Here I am, a 30-year-old guy. It's Wayne Dyer. And he was writing a book around that time called The Power of Intention. And we ended up, he said to me, looks at me, because again, I'm just achieving that. Talk about life-changing. And by the way, this can happen on social media every single day. Those days, to your point, I had to run on a beach in Maui to run into Wayne Dyer. Now you can get 45 minutes with me today or 45 minutes with you every hour, right? Every week. So he says to me, he says, Eddie, you're a good man. He looks right at me. We've only known each other 45 minutes. He goes, you're a good man. And I said, thank you, Wayne. And he said, I mean it. And he goes, you know why? You really intend to do well. You intend to do good. You remember that. Give yourself some credit. Every time you get down, your intentions are good, Eddie. And I got to tell you, I'm 50 years old. I've probably told myself 8,000, 9,000 different times, hey, you're a good man. You intend to do well. My self-confidence stems from one place. I'm a good man. I'm not a perfect man. I sin like crazy, right? Like we're all sinners, right? But I'm a good man. I intend to do well. I intend to make a difference. And long term, there is a power to our intentions. Eventually, if you put those intentions into the universe, something positive comes back to you eventually. And so my entire premise for my self-confidence comes from, I intend to do well. I don't always do well. I make mistakes, but my intentions are really good. Too many of us aren't giving ourselves credit for our good intentions. And I want to say this to everybody listening or watching this. Give yourself a little bit more credit for how good you are. I mean, not good in your ability or good at how special. That's a long leap to think we're special. But are you a good person? Do you intend to do good? Do you have a kindness in your heart? Do you want to serve other people? Because if you do, you ought to feel really damn good about yourself. Yeah. That's where confidence comes from.
That's powerful. And again, I really haven't heard that articulated before. So that's a strong point. And it is important to remind ourselves because it's easy to get down and hard on yourself. And so, just to get back to childhood. So, Eddie Spaghetti, you're starting to get a little bit of confidence. Serving at the boys' home helped, but what were some of the other major moments that kind of got you on at least a trajectory of success?
Yeah, mentors. So I got good at baseball as a young man, and that's where I could get people that would acknowledge me. So I started linking, if I hit this thing really far, they like me more. So I got good at baseball, and I learned my little formula. These guys leave batting practice like 5 minutes after it's over. I'll stay the extra hour. I don't even know where that came from. Or, when we went to the gym to lift weights, they do the weightlifting program and leave. And I'm like, okay, guys, I'll catch up with you. And my son just went away to college. And I've said this to him 100 times. I said, Max, I get off on doing things other people aren't willing to do. And so I started to figure this out. Oh, wait a minute. I just told my son this 2 days ago. Was it 2 days ago? It was last night. I said, Max, winning's not that hard. He's away at school now. I said, you see how these guys behave? You see how they party? You see how they take time off? You see how they're not focused? I go, Max, winning's not that hard. You're going to figure this out, man. Most people don't do any of this stuff I teach. And so actually show up earlier. Actually do the extra reps. I started doing this thing called one more, where no matter what I was doing, if the set was 10 sets on a bench press, I did 10 and one more. If that day I said I'm going to make 10 contacts, I did 10 and one more. I started building this thing called one more, right? If I was going to tell my daughter I love her today, I did that and then one more. And so I became this one more addict. 30 minutes on the treadmill, nope, 31 minutes, right? An hour and 1 minute. And this one more thing. And when I do it, I don't just do it, I do it with intention. I do it and I say, you're doing something no one's willing to do. You're going to get what no one's willing to get. And I started changing me through my behaviors. And I think that significance happened in the gym and happened in baseball. And then I found out when I went into business, oh, when the sales leader says, hey, make 20 calls a day, no one does this crap. I make 21 a day. And I actually do the things they tell me to do. This isn't that complicated. And you start to shrink the world down to who your actual competition is. It's not that many people if you're a hard worker. And I know that sounds simple, but most people flat out can't sustain hard work long term. The game is not that hard. It's not. And it's true in everything. I got into social media 3 or 4 years ago. I just produce content every day. I'm not talking about old stories all the time. I'm proving, I'm doing things currently. I work hard at it. So do you. Why are you so popular? One, you're great at what you do, but you're relentless in doing it. And you've gotten better. I watch some of your early interviews to now, you're just 1,000 times better. So you're growing, you're working hard, you're consistent, you surrounded yourself with a great team. It's not that hard to be dominant in the space like you are. It's not, would you agree? It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's not that hard, but I guess this is my next question is, how come most people fail at it? Is because they don't have the identity or they haven't equated the mission to the goals? Because you talk about this too.
Oh boy, that's so good. I think major part of life is identity. So as you know that I talk about this so often, but you're going to be consistent with your identity, period, end of story. Now, there's a thermometer which takes a temperature. That's how most people are in their life. They take the temperature. How do other people feel about me? They take the temperature. Okay, I'm 75 degrees or I'm 90 degrees. The winners have a thermostat. We all have a thermostat, which is different. At least in our country, a thermostat sitting right there on the wall sets the temperature of the room. Right now, it's probably 75 in here. What does not matter is the external conditions. Right. Most people are thermometers. They take the external condition. That's what I get. Winners are thermostat setters and are conscious of changing the temperature setting. So we all have this identity. Our identity is the thoughts, beliefs, and concepts that we hold to be most true, our worth about ourselves. No matter what you do, you're going to get your thermostat setting. So what happens for most people is they think they're a 75 degree, or let's just say of happiness or money. They start becoming happier, 80, 90, 95 degrees of money or happiness. Somehow, it seems coincidental, they turn the air conditioner on of their life and they get it right back down to their identity setting of 75 degrees every single time. If it's money, like, well, my car broke down. No, it's this. No, you're a 75 degreeer who was getting 90 degrees of money. You found a way to cool your life back down to the thermostat setting. The reverse is also true. You're starving. You're unemployed. You think you're never going to eat again. You eat again. You heat it up to 75 degrees. The key of your life is your ability to change that thermostat setting from 75 to 90 to 100 to 200 to 300 over your lifetime, and you will get it. You are a higher thermostat setting now than when you started this program. You're way higher than you were when you're having that heroin overdose at 28 years old, right? That's what's changed you. So it's not the external conditions. So for me, everything I do is dedicated to changing that thermostat setting. And you have multiple ones. You have a faith, you have a happiness, you have a relationship one, a money one. And so I change that. That's how I've changed my life, is changing my thermostat setting every time.
So powerful. And again, this gets lost, I think, in this day and age where people will teach you that goal setting thing or the morning routine thing, which is important, but without the identity, those are just going to be tactics, right? It's going to come and go.
I would look at it like if your wellness is important to you as a being, that morning routines, which I teach in my book, and goal setting and those things are like symptomatic things you can do. The root cure is your identity. The root cure is your identity. You can, and I've watched it. So have you. People come to seminars or events like, well, I do the morning routine. I take a cold shower. I meditate. I write my goals down. I do a gratitude list, and I'm still not winning. It's your identity.
Right.
It's your identity. And for those of you that are wondering, well, wait, I'm doing the things most people teach on here, and I'm still not producing the happiness or the results.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.